Hey, what's going on, music lovers, and welcome to another episode of Music Culture Daily. I am your host, Maurice. Please take the time to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications. And on today's episode, it's Sunday, so that means I'm going to bring you my weekly album rotation. If this is your first week tuning in, that means I'm going to talk about the albums that I listened to during this past week and share with you what's been on my playlist for the last 7 days. So without further ado, let's get right into it. And this is week number 4. First up, on Sunday, I was listening to Drake's second studio album. This album is entitled Take Care. This album was released back on November 15th, 2011 through Cash Money Records, Young Money Entertainment, and Universal Republic Records. This album has guest appearances from a lot of dope artists from The Weeknd, Rihanna, Kendrick Lamar, Andre 3000, Rick Ross, Lil Wayne, Nicki Minaj, and Birdman, just to name a few. This album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 charts. It also received positive reviews during its initial release. The album also had production from up and coming great young producers by the name of T-Minus, Boy Wonder, also like industry veterans like Just Blaze, just to name a few. This album also consisted of 7 singles was released off this album. The first single, the first 4 singles all was released back in 2011. The first single released off this album was entitled Marvin's Room. The second single was entitled Headlines. The third single, Make Me Proud. The fourth single, The Motto, one of my personal favorites. The fifth single was entitled Take Care, and the sixth single, 𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐿, was released. And the 7th and final single that was released off this album was entitled Crew Love, released back on July 30th, 2012. Like I said, I enjoyed this album. I think it's a good album. It's one of Drake's best albums. This is his second album. This one when he was, he's still at the top of the rap game right now, even 10 years later. So I just wanted to give this album a listen on Sunday. And moving right along, on Monday, I kept it in the Cash Money family, and I was listening to Lil Wayne's 6th studio album. This album was entitled The Carter 3, which was released all the way back on June 10th, 2008 through Cash Money, Universal Motown, and his own label imprint, Young Money Entertainment. This album debuted at number 1, and it famously was known for moving and selling 1 million copies in its first week. This album had hits such as Lollipop, A Milli, Got Money, and Miss Officer. Like I said, this album received widespread critically acclaim. It also won the Grammy for Best Rap Album and the Grammy for Best Rap Song with Lollipop, and the Grammy for Best Rap Solo Performance with A Milli. This was Lil Wayne when he was at the top of his game, definitely running rap. Everything he was coming out with was turning to gold. He was all over the radio. He was the hottest person that you needed on your song when you needed a feature. Lil Wayne was the man back in that 2006, 2007, 2008, in that era. He definitely was the king of rap, undisputed. And this album had production from Kanye West, also had production from Swiss Beats, T-Pain, Alchemist, Kool and Dre, just to name a few. Like I said, this album also, it saw the release of 5 singles. It definitely was a huge, wildly successful album, and it's also featured on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Times list. All right, so that's what I was listening to on Monday, The Carter 3. Moving right along to Tuesday, I was listening to SZA's first album, her debut album. This album is entitled Ctrl. This album right here was released back on June 9th, 2017 through Top Dog Entertainment and RCA Records. It featured guest appearances from Travis Scott, label mate Kendrick Lamar and Isaiah Rashad, excuse me. It also had 5 singles released off this album. The first single being entitled Drew Barrymore. The second single being entitled Love Galore. The third single, one of the most popular singles off this album, maybe the most popular single off this album, was entitled The Weeknd. And the fourth single, Broken Clocks, was also released. And the fifth and final single off this album was Garden, Say It Like That, was released. This album received widespread critically acclaim also. It's a great album. This is her debut album coming out the gate. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 charts. It moved like equivalent of 60,000 albums in its first week. It definitely put SZA on the map as a new R&B artist that deserved to be respected. So that's pretty much what I was listening to on Tuesday. And moving right along, I took it back. I went to another genre of music, like the rock side, one of my favorite artists of all time, and I was listening to Jimi Hendrix. This is his last studio album before his untimely passing. This album right here is entitled Electric Ladyland. This album right here was released back in 1968. So this album is old. It's a very old album. It's a classic album. It's actually his last album that he recorded before his death in 1970. This album was released through Track Records in the UK. It's a double album. A lot of great producers during that time in the era. I can't seem to find it, but this album is also featured on Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time as well. So if you haven't listened to this, if you're into like different sounds, different like rock type stuff, this is Jimi Hendrix, one of the best and greatest guitarists ever to get on the guitar. He's dope. He was great. Definitely ahead of his time. Unfortunately, his untimely passing at the age of 27, he wasn't able to get more classic material from Jimi Hendrix. So that's what I was listening to on Wednesday. Jimi Hendrix, The Electric Ladyland. And coming up on Thursday, had to show my man Jadakiss, show 𝐤𝐤𝐿 some love. I was listening to Jadakiss's first solo studio album entitled Kiss the Game Goodbye. This album was released on August 7, 2001 by Rough Riders Entertainment and Interscope Records. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 charts and number 2 on the top R&B and hip hop charts. This album it had guest appearances, of course, from his fellow brothers, The Lox, Sheek Louch, Styles P, other members of the Rough Rider family like Eve. Nas was on this album, of course. DMX, may he rest in peace. This album went on to sell about 877,000 copies, just under platinum. This album received great reviews upon its release, and Jadakiss is one of my favorite rappers, so I definitely had to show him some love. And it had production from everybody, from the Alchemist, DJ Premier, Just Blaze, the Neptunes, of course Swiss Beats, Timbaland, just to name a few. So that's what I was listening to on Thursday. Jadakiss, Kiss the Game Goodbye. And on Friday, I was listening to Rick Ross' 4th studio album. This album is entitled Teflon Don. This album right here is my favorite Rick Ross album. I love this album, everything about it. It was released back in 2010 through Maybach Music Group, Slip and Slide Records, and Def Jam Recordings. It had production from No ID, Clark Kent, Justice League, Lex Luger, just to name a few. This album sold 176,000 copies in its first week, and it debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 charts. It also received generally positive reviews. This album had 3 singles that was released with this album. The first single being Super High, the second single being BMF featuring Styles P, one of my favorite songs on the album, and the third and final single released off this album was entitled Aston Aston Martin music featuring Chrisette Michele and Drake on the hook. Another one of my favorite songs off the album. Like I said, what more can I say? It was a great album. It had features from Jay-Z, T.I., Raphael Sadiq, as I mentioned, Drake, Erykah Badu, Jadakiss was on this album also. It was just a dope album, man. Rick Ross, one of my favorite rappers, one of my favorite entrepreneurs. Had to show him some love on Friday. And on Saturday, moving right along, on Saturday, had to show my man Jay-Z some love with his third studio album. This album was released back in 1998. This album is entitled Volume 2, Hard Knock Life. It was released through Rockefeller Records and Def Jam Recording. It went on to be Jay-Z's most successful studio album. A lot of people may not know this, but this album right here is the album that Jay-Z sold the most records on. I think it sold about 4 or 5 million copies. Had 4 singles released off this album. Can I Get A? Featuring 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞 and a new artist by 𝐜𝐨𝐬. 𝐥𝐢𝐤 was pretty much unknown at that time also. The second single, the classic single that featured, that sampled Hard Knock Life from the Annie play and movie. That song was entitled, as I said, Hard Knock Life, Ghetto Anthem. It also had the third single that was released called Money Cash Hoes. The fourth and final single off this album was entitled Nigga What, Nigga Who, Originator 99. This album had guest appearances from Too Short, Memphis Bleak, relatively new artists by the name of Benny Single. DMX was on this album. Foxy Brown. It like I said, he pretty much had a lot of people on this album. Jermaine Dupri with their collaboration entitled Money Ain't a Thing was also on this album. This album received positive reviews as well. It also spawned the Hard Knock Life tour that was headlined by Jay-Z and DMX, who were pretty much the biggest rappers in the business at that time. Also, the production was handled by Irv Gotti, Kid Capri, Jermaine Dupri, Rottweiler, the 48 King, DJ Premier, Eric Sermon, a young up-and-coming Swiss Beats, and Timbaland, just to name a few. This album was executive produced by Sean Carter, Damian Dash, and Kareem Biggs Burks, and it was recorded pretty much in a lot of famous studios across New York City, like D&D Studios and Sony Music Studios and Quad Studios, which are, you know, some of the most legendary hip-hop studios, recording studios in the business. That's pretty much it, man. This album received positive reviews. It's one of my favorite Jay-Z albums. I love this album. There's not much I really can say. Just a great album. To me, it helped Jay-Z go into the mainstream. It helped take his career to the next level. So, you know, this album right here is probably one of the most important Jay-Z albums, probably the most important Jay-Z album, because it helped him go to the next level when he released this album. He also won the Grammy for this album, and he famously boycotted the Grammys that year because they wasn't televising the rap category at that time, back in 1999, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so, well, that would do it for me for this week's album, weekly album rotation. Once again, like I said, this is week number 4. If you like what I'm doing, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Share the video, comment in the comments. Everything is welcome. Please, until the next time, please continue to keep pushing the culture forward. Until the next time, catch you guys later, and I'm out. Peace.